From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Chicago Newsroom here on Can TV. I'm Ken Davis. Welcome to another show, another week, and what a week it's been. There is no way we could not focus on politics this week. Are you ready? Are you getting yourself ready for that morning when you wake up and look in the bathroom mirror and say, President Trump, President Donald Trump? Well, there's plenty of that to talk about and plenty of local stuff that's going on too. We've got one of the greatest proxy battles in politics that I can remember in my lifetime going on in Illinois. So when you have all of this local and national stuff and you live in Chicago, the only guy you got to talk to is Bruce DuMont from Beyond the Beltway and now WIND.
Yes, great, and it's great to be with you talking politics. This is like a pig in mud.
Yeah, I mean there just can't be anything happier than being here right now talking about all of this stuff.
Especially this weekend, because you've got Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
Right.
Kasich just left town, and Cruz, I guess, is coming as well.
And they're all rolling in for the Illinois.
They're rolling in, spend their obligatory day and a half here.
Hillary Clinton trying to convince us all that she's actually an Illinoisan. So, where does one start? Other than, let's just start with the big question. How did Donald Trump happen?
Donald Trump happened because Republican leadership in Washington, D.C., at the Senate and House level, did not go and do the things they promised and said they would do to their Republican constituency. That's a big part of it. The other part of it is what's happening in the Democratic Party is that the Bill and Hillary Clinton Democratic Party has not done a good job in protecting its left base. And now she has to run to the left base, and it's being demonstrated, as it was in Michigan last week, that she's not home yet. It looks real good, but if she has to win an election, she has to bring those people that are voting against her and the euphoria of the Sanders people. It's got to be alive and well on Election Day, and I think that is a real challenge to her.
You know, there have been many moments in the last few weeks when something's happened and I've thought, geez, I wish I could talk to Bruce DuMont about this. And so I'm going to try to sort of get it all out in about a half an hour here. But give me your take on how, it seems to me, let's start off by saying, it seems to me that polling is getting better and better and has largely been pretty accurate in most of these crazy races that we've been going through.
Except Michigan.
But boy, did they get this one wrong. 22 points ahead, at least it was a few days out, 22 points, and she loses by 1.5. I mean, was that procedural error or was that a change in the zeitgeist? What was it?
We don't know yet, because I think we will know probably next Wednesday when the results come in from Illinois and Florida and Ohio as to whether or not the pollsters in those states got it wrong again. So that's going to be the issue. Is it the methodology, or, as you say, is it the zeitgeist? And we won't know. We'll know next Wednesday, because we'll all head to the polls, whether we're voting early or late. We're going to know whether those polls, I mean, all the polls suggest that she should roll to victory in Illinois. We'll see what happens next Wednesday.
Yeah, and I mean, there's she's looking really good in Florida and looking really good. These are wide margins, but I don't think anybody was really even expecting there to be much of a race in Michigan, and for it to have turned so quickly. There are a couple of things that I think were just really fascinating about it. I did hear some analysis yesterday that a couple of the polls that drove her numbers up particularly high in that aggregation of polls actually didn't use any cell phone polling at all. So, I mean, they basically cut out all the millennial vote, which is ridiculous when you've got Bernie Sanders in there. I mean, how can you not do that?
Yeah, well, again, the polling for the most part has been accurate, but again, I think the challenge to the Democratic Party and to Hillary Clinton is not whether or not she's going to be the nominee. I do believe she will be the nominee, but how do you keep those that voted against her, a growing number of people that voted against her, how do you keep them enthused and excited? Because again, in many of these election night speeches that Bernie Sanders has given, or when there's in the picture of Hillary Clinton giving her speech, there is the sound and the video of Sanders supporters booing Hillary Clinton. Those people are not likely to support her if she's the Democratic nominee. They're not going to go to Donald Trump, I don't think. But
well, you don't even know that.
We don't know that.
Don't know that at this point. Right.
I don't think.
Right.
But they're certainly going to be either sitting on their hands and they're not voting for her, and that's important.
It's interesting because if you look at 8 years ago when Barack Obama overtook her and obviously became the nominee.
Right.
There was a lot of that noise about Hillary people not supporting Obama, but if my memory serves me correctly, they did all come around in the end. I mean, they must have, because Obama did well.
Right.
So the Hillary people did come around to Barack Obama, but this seems different somehow. I'm not sure that somebody for whom this is their first passionate election is gonna see that.
No, I agree with you because of the age and, as you say, they're first-time voters. They don't know the sophistication that you run a race, you lose, you get up and you support the winner. There is no tradition of doing that.
Yeah.
And I do believe that her biggest problem is, and there's also been a tremendous difference in the enthusiasm between who's coming up for the Republican voters in the primaries and caucuses, who's going to the Democrats. The Republicans have a huge lead in that area, which gets into the excitement. I think most of the excitement and most of that turnout, I think the credit goes to Donald Trump. But I do believe that the competition between Cruz and Rubio is also energizing some constituents as well.
You know, the comparison, I guess maybe I would say the frame in which I place all of this is from my own life. In '72, I was crazy McGovern. I mean, I traveled around, went to California, all this kind of stuff, took time off work to go and work for McGovern. And the guy we were all working against was Hubert Humphrey, right? I mean, it was like, Hubert Humphrey was the Hillary Clinton of my day.
That's right.
And I just couldn't stand Hubert Humphrey. It wasn't until much, much later in my life that I really began to realize that Hubert Humphrey was probably a better candidate than my guy was. And that if we had gotten behind Hubert Humphrey, he would have beat Richard Nixon, and American history would be different today for that. So there's no real lesson to be learned here, other than just that there is this kind of enthusiasm of youth that this is the guy you're working for.
No, and by the way, I'm glad you told your story about your youth and McGovern in '72. I can tell the exact same story about Barry Goldwater in 1964.
I'm sure you can,
because it was the same thing. And at that particular point, and by the way, I would say that this year, the equivalent might be the Cruz. I think Cruz is more of an equivalent to Goldwater than Donald Trump. But the answer is this: when you turn back the clock to when you were 20 or 21, and myself as well, it was more. You were on a crusade. You were for some. You weren't.
We're
going
to change America.
But you also wanted control of the party, and McGovern got control of the party, and Goldwater got control of the party. So when you get control of the party, your guy gets in, and then he runs into a buzzsaw on election day. But again, you're 20, you're 23 years old. So I think we can extrapolate from our own personal experiences what's going to happen, with Bernie Sanders. And I would also say that what happened with Barry Goldwater and what happened to a lesser extent with George McGovern. I think those that are being engaged right now by Bernie Sanders, they may not win the war this year, but the seeds are being planted because not everybody's going to go home and go away. A lot of them are going to stay involved. And again, so we look to 4 years, 8 years down the road, and we will see a Democratic Party that has been affected, and the imprint of Bernie Sanders will be on that party for 4 to 8 years, just as it was for Barry Goldwater, because he begat Ronald Reagan.
I mean, we can get off of this topic, but it's interesting to me. One of the images burned in my mind forever is winning the California primary and heading out to, I don't know where we were, Santa Monica or something, to the beach that night and having this little victory party on the beach, all of us working, and actually sitting there thinking, we could win this. and we will change America forever.
And Goldwater, by the way, Goldwater was pushed over the top because of the victory in the California primary in June, just like McGovern in 72, and then obviously he went to San Francisco where he got the nomination.
Right.
But again, this year, and I've said it last Sunday night on Beyond the Beltway, California on June 7th, that could be a pivotal. California is still going to play an important role.
Weird?
It's going to push somebody over the top. By the way, I have to stop here just for a moment, and I know that for television we can't instantly do this, but maybe for next year, and I don't want you to take this as an insult, but I am looking at you, sir, right now, and you look exactly like Senator Barry Goldwater.
You know, I've been
I want you to
before.
get that picture for next week. I want you to put your face next to Senator Barry Goldwater, and the audience will be confused as to who's who.
It's these conservative. It's these conservative architect glasses,
and the hairline,
right.
and the silver hair, and the broad smile.
Well, we all want to change America, don't we? Yeah. You know, while we're on this, talking about 1972 and the democratic reforms and all that went into place, we are still living with so much of what happened in 1972 with the changes to the Democratic Party regulations, right? Wasn't one of those superdelegates, isn't that where superdelegates came from? Why did the Democrats end up with superdelegates and not the Republicans? Give me a history lesson. Do you have any idea?
I think they wanted more control over their people. I mean, that's it.
Wait a minute, isn't that supposed to be a Republican
well,
thing?
no. No, it's freedom of choice. And
oh, that's right. I forgot.
That's
right. Yeah.
Control.
Right. So, I mean, why are we in this situation today where Hillary Clinton has all of these superdelegates and Bernie Sanders has almost none?
Because I do believe the fear. I mean, the establishment, be it the Republican establishment or the Democratic establishment, these are people who are professional politicians.
Right.
They wake up every morning and all they're thinking about is politics, and so their concern is control. We want to control the party. If we can control the party, we control the apparatus, we control the convention, we make the rules, we can change the rules. We maintain our own power base. And by maintaining your own power base, you try to kick anybody who wants to get into your club, you kick them off the ladder. And that I think that's true for the Democrats as well as the Republicans. And right now, Hillary Clinton was, and then when you have someone on the outside who literally wants to tip over the apple cart and wants to say things like, "Wait a minute, we're going to stop fundraising anymore. No, you can't go to Wall Street." I think that is the Achilles heel of Hillary Clinton. I mean, every single debate, Bernie Sanders is hammering her on her closeness, with Wall Street, and she doesn't have an answer for that question. Even in the debate last night, and I thought the debate last night in Miami, it was Bernie Sanders' strongest. I mean, he was really rolling last night, and I think they were walking into a Univision a debate that was going to be soft on her. I mean, I think she took her toughest questions. Jorge Ramos, I think, was really drilling her much more than Bernie Sanders last night, and she did not handle his questions or other questions well, in my opinion.
I thought that, well, as I have thought all along, they both have had their moments. They've both had really good moments and really bad moments, and that's what's been so interesting about it. And one of the things that I find kind of appealing about it is that there's always at the end been this sense that these are two people who do have respect for each other, at least they appear to, and they really understand the kind of two tarantulas in a bottle kind of thing that if they go too far with the insults and if they really start ripping each other's faces off, they're both going to lose for that. So they have a different dynamic than the Republicans have right now, I think, where they really need to be ripping away at each other.
Well, I think, as I said earlier, I think each of them understand. Hillary understands that she can't go too far because she needs those people in November.
Right.
Bernie Sanders has a constituency that I think may be beyond his complete control, because a portion of those people that are going out, and these are primarily some of the younger folks, they are going to go home. They are going to sulk. But again, he's looking for a longer day. His place in American history is not just going to be running in the Democratic primary in 2016. We're going to look to 20 and 24 and 28.
Oh, I agree.
And we will see the seeds that are being planted this year, just as we said with
Even
George
though
McGovern
he
and
himself
Berlin.
won't be that person,
He will not be that guy.
what he planted and what he created is going to have impact.
And I
for a
think
long
that
time.
as they aged, I think George McGovern and Barry Goldwater understood the same thing.
Yes, yeah, I
You
completely
plant the
agree
seeds,
with that.
and
Yeah.
they may not pop up quickly enough for you, but
Yeah.
the seeds have been planted.
So, have the seeds of Barry Goldwater resulted in Donald Trump? I mean, how do you get from Barry Goldwater to Donald Trump?
Well, you get from you go from Barry Goldwater to Ronald Reagan, and the question is, how do you get from Ronald Reagan to Donald Trump?
Right.
And I think the big answer is. So much of it is related to his celebrity. I mean, he commands, when he announced, and people didn't think he was going to run,
Coming down the escalator.
including myself.
Right.
I mean, Donald Trump is a celebrity. We cannot forget that for almost 15, 16 seasons, he was the host of the star of a top 10 show. He was a much bigger television personality than Ronald Reagan was a movie personality. And so built into that is 15, 20 years of the American people, many of whom are demographically correct. They would tune in every single week, and they would see this guy. He would be demanding of 8 to 9 people accountability. You're fired. You did a good. Why did you do this? And I think they see in that person, they see a take charge guy who's going to fire people and dump them if they're not doing the job. And I think that's part of the frustration of both Democrats and Republicans when they look at Donald Trump and then they look at how their party leaders have reacted in Washington, D.C. And so that's a big plus for him. You factor into that the guy's self-funding his own campaign. That also is a very big plus.
It is, and it's very appealing. I hate to put it this way, but I find it to be very appealing to people who are not really necessarily looking for complex answers to things.
Right.
I'll fix it. I'm a deal maker.
I'll fix it. And the other thing, getting back to the media, I mean, Donald Trump knows the media better than anyone that's ever run. And he also knows, and I think a good example of this was the other night when he was going on and over an hour with his with QVC acceptance speech.
And look at my bottled water.
That's right. It was like I was expecting the numbers to flash across the screen. See the prices go up. But there was not one cable network that pulled away. They did not carry Hillary Clinton.
You brought that. Right.
They carried. And you know why? Because when he is on camera, love him or hate him, the numbers go up. And the news media and television, it's about ratings. It is about ratings, period.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, like I'm sure you were, I was sitting with the clicker watching this and thinking, well, this is a disaster. I mean, there's nothing going on here.
Time to go.
If I were calling the shots, I would say, all right, let's get out of this. Oh, look, Hillary's live. Let's go to her. Not even MSNBC. Nobody did it.
But you see, that's the world we live in. It is the celebrity. I mean, a good example, I think, is Marco Rubio, who I think has fallen fast, way too fast, for I think the spirit. But I mean, he screwed up, and he has admitted that he screwed up. But where did he screw up? He screwed up when he decided to get down in the mud.
When he got sucked into the vortex.
When he got sucked into it, and also he was the one that brought up the issue of the hands. That led to the gutter level of it. So he wears the jacket for that. He has suffered from that. And like every other candidate that's gone out there to take on Donald Trump directly, the result is he has gone down, down, down.
And Trump gets stronger.
And Trump gets stronger.
And more popular.
That's right. And the media decries the level of the discussion, but in this particular case, now Trump answered the challenge, but we cannot forget that challenge started with Marco Rubio. It did not start with Donald Trump.
Yes,
he ended it.
Yeah. So I really wanted to talk to you about some of the sort of bigger trend things. What does this election year tell us about Citizens United? I was one of the millions who was frightened as hell of Citizens United. I thought it was going to completely destroy politics in America. And yet all the billionaires now are sitting on the side scratching their heads and saying, wait a minute, I have billions to spend. I don't know where to spend it. What do you think?
I think the people the people are rendering their verdict on that. I mean, here you have, Bernie Sanders raising more money than anyone that's ever run for president, averaged $27 as he talks about.
$27.
Then you have the self-funded campaigns, and the ones that have the most money, the Jeb Bush's $120 million, wasted money. Hillary Clinton, a lot of what she's spending a lot of money. She's graveling for money now. So the ones with the most money have had the biggest challenge. So in my view, even though it's better to have money than not have it. You've got to have the message. What's exciting to me is that Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, whether you like them or not, they are saying things that are unfiltered. They're not on a teleprompter. I don't think either of them use teleprompters. So it's coming from the head, it's coming from the heart, and it's coming out the mouth. Sometimes it's a little, with Donald Trump, it doesn't comes out, a little unfiltered. But I think that people like that, and the slickly packaged. I was watching a spot just last night. It was a Marco Rubio spot running in Illinois. It was the same spot that ran 4 months ago. I mean, it makes no sense.
Well, he got the Tribune endorsement today.
He got the Tribune endorsement, and we'll see what that's worth.
We sure will.
The 30 endorsements that Kasich has received so far haven't meant much.
I mean, I saw did you notice that the Cook County Republicans met last night to do their kind of like old straw poll? And it was Kasich 58%, Cruz 29%, Trump 2%, Rubio 0%, but he got the Tribune. So there you go. The people are speaking rather loudly.
Well, Kasich, I think, is well positioned in Illinois. I frankly was a little stupefied that the Tribune did not endorse Kasich. That kind of surprised me.
Give me a minute or two on a perception that I have that both the United States Congress and the presidency are being diminished in their role in our lives and the role in running this country. I believe that ALEC, for example, the Legislative Council, a conservative think tank that has really become very powerful in America, they've taught us all a lesson that you can really run this country by just getting all the governorships and getting the legislatures in all the different states to do your work for you. And you really pretty much don't need Congress. I mean, as Congress has become more and more just bricked in and incapable of doing anything, we seem to be finding a workaround. It's almost like the kind of thing we've talked about with big media and working around big media. Maybe we're working around that kind of government too.
Well, I think governors are important. Historically, governors is where we select our presidents. But in this particular case, there's only one governor left. We'll know Tuesday night whether or not John Kasich survives Ohio. So the voters are going to those that, frankly, don't have the track record of accomplishment. They have the track record of rhetoric. They have the track record of seizing a media focus, as Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz, on the day he walked into the Senate, he knew the media game, so he decided to carve out, his image. And his image is both a plus and a negative, because although I think a lot of people are traveling with him or joining his cause because they believe in what he says, and I do believe he believes in what he says, but his style and his tone has demonstrated that he doesn't play well with others. So again, if you like gridlock, you may like Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz is not likely to be able to persuade anyone to go his way if he is the president of the United States, in my opinion. First of all, he's got to walk in to the United States Senate, and the majority leader, who you've called a liar publicly, you got to make amends with him. That is, if he is still the majority leader.
Well, that's another question in itself, isn't it? What's your quick take on that? Do you think the Senate will remain Republican?
I do at the moment, because I think everyone is assuming, I mean, the establishment and their chorus of supporters, in the media are basically saying how horrible it is going to be. The climate of America is going to be so horrible if Donald Trump runs, let alone if Donald Trump wins. They are suspecting that that the world is going to come to an end. The reality is that if Donald Trump really can expand the base, one of the things I do believe that Hillary Clinton is worried about, I think she's worried about running against Donald Trump.
Oh, so do I.
I think every establishment, whether they're the Democratic side or the Republican side, I think they're scared because, you know what, there will be a massive turnout, and if you don't know who's voting, you don't know who's going to win. You really don't know what's going to happen.
Donald Trump is the politics.
By the way, I would say the exact same thing about Bernie Sanders. A Sanders-Trump race for the presidency. Every politician in America would be scared out of their wits because no one would know what would happen.
What's going to happen, I was going to say that Donald Trump is to politics what the internet is to everything in life. It's just sort of like it just keeps coming and coming and coming and smothering everything in its path. And there's nothing you can do about it.
You cannot, the inertia is there, and it's you either jump on or you're going to be rolled over.
Look back. I know we can't do this in less than 2 hours, but look back for a minute at NAFTA. Is NAFTA one of the main seeds of what we're harvesting today?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Was it a mistake?
I think NAFTA was a mistake. It certainly was a mistake, I think, for the Democratic Party. And I think that what we're seeing now is, I think that's what we saw in Michigan. I think we'll probably see it again in Ohio next week. I'm not so sure that Hillary will lose Ohio, but I mean that is an issue that is there. And again, it's hard to explain. In some ways, Ross Perot was correct. That giant sucking sound we can now hear.
We didn't hear it right away.
We didn't hear it right away, and the messenger was not one that had credibility. But again, the Democratic Party and its leaders did not take the time to have a conversation with their base, with their constituency, about how the world was changing and about how their role had to change. And because of that, they left a lot of people they left a lot of people in their wake, and those, in many cases, are people that are showing up at Donald Trump rallies, and they are the Democrats
and their children.
And their children, and they are the Democrats, and they are the independents. That the person who has the greatest ability to draw votes from the other side in this race right now, in my view, is Donald Trump.
Now, for that reason.
For that reason,
because he's just saying,
he's
look,
speaking
this was a
to their
huge mistake,
issues.
And you're going to need me to fix it. Is basically it. But I mean, at the time, the conversation, which I completely agree was inadequate. But it was a call to arms. It was saying, look, the world is changing. We have containerization that gets things all across the planet in a few days. We have this thing called the internet coming our way. We are part of a global world now. We can't just sit here in our isolated little country and sell things to each other.
They were correct, but the issue is one of communication. The goal at that particular time was, how do you win a congressional vote? It was something that George Bush had supported. Bill Clinton was the one that delivered on it. And so NAFTA was bipartisan. The labor movement was against it for the most part. But it was, how do you win a vote? How do you win a vote is when you get strong. You don't, it's pure politics. You do this, or we're gonna cut you at the neck. They did not take the time. It's communication. They didn't take the time. I once had a conversation with newly named Commerce Secretary Bill Daley about this. Early on, press conference over at the Palmer House Hotel. And I took Bill, I've known Bill for years. I said, Bill, when are you going to take some time to sort of explain this to what's happening? Because on paper, it was wise, it was the thing to do, but they didn't take it. And what did they do? And by the way, it's interesting. The footprints of NAFTA, most fingerprints, or footprints, because there were footprints on the back of somebody's neck. Bill Daley and Rahm Emanuel, they were the two principal people that drove the vote on NAFTA, which gave Bill Clinton a big victory, and that big victory is something that Hillary Clinton is going to have to defend next Tuesday in Ohio.
And so that's where we're at today. We have,
Yeah.
we have,
The seeds of NAFTA are part of the discontent in a sector of the electorate.
And totally understandable, because the part that didn't get explained was, yeah, we're going to become part of this global economy, and things are going to get a lot better for a lot of people all the way around the world. But for you, not so much. 20 years from now, you're not going to be in much better shape than you are now.
But the people that are going to benefit from this new world order, that was, remember the New World Order? This was part of the New World Order.
Yeah.
The people that were going to benefit from the New World Order are the corporations and the 1%.
And they will do very, very well. And so you should be happy for them, right?
But Joe Sixpack. He's So I think that's what Bernie Sanders is talking about.
And Walmart will do very well, and as a result of doing very well, they will be able to produce $16 DVD machines in China. So you won't have a job, but you'll be able to get really good quality material for very little money.
And Walmart, which is the world's worst retailer according to most liberals, who was on their board? Hillary Clinton was on their board.
Yep.
I mean, she's got a lot
of splaining to do. Is that what you're saying?
The Clinton Foundation. We're going to know all about the Clinton Foundation. That's general election stuff.
I was going to ask you. So, what is the Republican Oppo research working on, or does Trump even need Oppo research?
I don't know.
He probably doesn't even need it, right?
But Kasich said it the other night that he's going to focus on issues. That's why I don't. Although, on paper, Kasich should be the nominee. Kasich, he's got the record. There are the polls that say he's got an 11-point lead over Hillary. But in a campaign, you got to go for the jugular, and I don't think he has it. The only guy that's got it is Trump, and there will be no issue that will be off the table for Trump, as he's already demonstrated.
Just another quick question here on the national thing. My observation is that Barack Obama has floated into lame duckery much more quickly than I would have expected him to. I don't know if that's really true, but it feels that way. I mean, especially with like the Supreme Court nomination and that kind of thing. You have any sense of that?
Well, I think he's probably tired. I mean, you're right. I think he's coasting. He's coasting right now. I mean, some of his big issues he's sort of addressed. He's going to try to get Guantanamo. That's sort of the big promise that hasn't happened yet. He may have a hard time getting that done. And I think if there's a Republican, they'll just reopen it again. I don't think it's going to be closed very long. But the other stuff is, there are things that are sort of beyond his control. I think the other thing that you talk about turnout and everything else. We don't know if there could be another terrorist attack somewhere. Another terrorist attack is not going to be good for him. It's not going to be good for Hillary. This was the other thing about Donald Trump, is there are things that happened in the world that he had no control over, but he is the beneficiary of what happened. In other words, he makes a strong statement about Mexico and Mexicans, and then 2 weeks later, Kate Steinle is murdered by an illegal immigrant in San Francisco. So that's a big story. So and then Guzman escapes from the Mexican prison. Well, they got him back, but again, that's another thing. And then he's talking about something else, and then Sacramento happens and Paris happens. So he has been sort of in the right place. So coincidentally, he's been in the right place at the right time, or ahead of things on some points, and he's benefited from that. And no one else has been able to do that yet. But between now and Election Day, there's going to be 3 or 4 other things that happen that are going to be wow moments, I think, or at least 1 or 2.
So, we live in Illinois. Want to talk just for a couple of minutes about what's going on here?
Sure.
Anita Alvarez, of course, is being run against by Kim Foxx and Donna Moore. Kim Foxx seems to be surging a little bit, but my sense of it is that there's, especially with 2 of them running against Alvarez wins no matter what scenario.
I think you look at them. I agree with you. You look at the math, and I think Anita Alvarez, she makes it. She survives.
I mean,
and I'm also. It amazes me about that the Cook County Republican Party
Mm-hmm.
could not have put a more concerted effort into finding a high-value, high-ticket person that could really challenge for that office.
In November.
Because in the past, when there's been problems, the Republicans have been able to come up with a candidate who was credible.
Yeah.
And on 2 occasions, it was a Republican or state's attorney that was able to beat a Democrat. And in all cases, it went back to a mistake and basically a split in the Democratic Party in the African American community that really led to that movement.
And it is an office that you could make an argument has a kind of a natural tendency toward Republicanism. I mean, a good, solid Republican candidate would probably do very well in the collar counties and not the collar counties, but in the suburbs, in the suburban
county towns,
suburban.
But you see that to me is the Cook County Republican Party doesn't they don't have the dollars nor the sense to plan that, because that should have been as soon as the Laquan McDonald tape became public and the vulnerability of Anita Alvarez was apparent. The Republicans, they should have come up with someone and poured some money into a campaign so that there's a Republican candidate that is there, because a Republican candidate that was ready to go, and they have someone, but it's not a brand name. They should have had somebody ready, because if Alvarez wins the Democratic primary, there's still going to be a lot of disgruntled African Americans, and you haven't given them a place to go. In the past, when this occurred again, or in the past, they could have gone to Jack O'Malley, who won the office as a Republican. They could have gone to Bernard Carey, who won the office as a Republican and was reelected. So the Republicans do well in that office if the Democratic base, primarily African Americans, are divorced from the traditional candidate, and that's going to be likely the case here.
So I think, we're certainly both in agreement that it looks like Anita Alvarez gets another term. It seems very difficult to believe that something is going to change that in the next few days. We don't know. There could be a surge in African American vote, and that could help, but it looks that way.
By the way, on that African American vote, and this is going to be something else that I have not heard discussed at the national level. But I was at a rally several weeks ago. This was a Bernie Sanders event, opening of an office, and one of their delegates was making the point that Hillary Clinton's top surrogate, top supporter in Illinois, is Rahm Emanuel, and she was making the point that a vote for Hillary Clinton is a vote for Rahm Emanuel. And so the impression was that what she was suggesting is that this is an opportunity for the African American community, which obviously is sort of focused on Kim Foxx at the moment. This is an opportunity for the African American community to send a real message to Rahm Emanuel and to Hillary Clinton that they don't appreciate her closeness to Rahm Emanuel. So this is an opportunity, whether the black community accepts it or not, to really send a message to Hillary Clinton. So should she fall below what people expect her to do in Chicago, that will be interesting to see.
That could be a factor.
That would be a factor, but no one's discussed that as yet.
As much as I would like to spend another 20 minutes talking about Rahm Emanuel, I'll resist the temptation, because it is a separate show. But I mean, it's kind of like the opening question about Donald Trump. It's like, how do you explain Donald Trump? How do you explain Rahm Emanuel at this point? I mean, I don't think I would have believed on the day that he got elected that on this day he would be as just profoundly unpopular as he is. I mean, it's a confluence of a lot of things, but some of it is, I'll posit that some of it is his really kind of lack of political sense. That he seemed like he was a very good political operative, but maybe he's not that great a politician.
Well, he is a control freak. He's always been a control freak. And control freaks just can't comprehend that there may come a day when they lose their skills. And I think that may be the case here. I mean, he's very strong, he's very powerful, But as I think a story I mentioned, long ago, when he used to be a regular on Beyond the Beltway.
Yes, he did.
And we went out to dinner, as we frequently did after those broadcasts, with the late Tom Roser, and we had real good knockdown, drag out, no holes barred, man-to-man conversations. And at one point, this is going back 30 years ago, when he was climbing up the ladder, and most people didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. And
you introduced me to him in those old WBEZ
that's
days.
Right. He was a guest, a regular guest for almost 7 years. Mm-hmm. So we got to know each other very well. But I said at one particular point, I said, Ram, I said, you got to be nice to people going up, like every mother has told their son, you got to be nice to people going up the ladder because you're going to meet the same people coming down. Mm-hmm. And he stopped me and he said, I'll never forget this. This is almost a direct quote. He said, no, Bruce, he said, if I get up the ladder, I'm not coming down.
Did he really say that to you?
He did. So he could not.
Okay, then.
He could not comprehend. Mm-hmm. He could not comprehend that if he climbed, and then of course I watched him for 20 years, and he did climb that ladder, and he did climb that ladder, and he was soaring, and he had just been reelected, and then we have seen that someone who climbed that ladder is going down, and many of the national news media, who he had fed stories to for years. Yeah. He was a main feeder of generally dirt on the opposition, and they appreciated that. But like every reporter, if you smell blood in the water, you go for that target, and that's exactly what happened. And some of the national, some of the most devastating journalistic pieces about Rahm have been done by out-of-town reporters.
Who only a year or two earlier were writing all these wonderful things about how Rahm Emanuel had single-handedly saved Chicago from itself.
That's right.
How quickly they turned, because it's that latter thing. And I guess
by the way, I want to find, and also pick up on something that we just recently discussed, is I want to see in the analysis of what happens in the Rust Belt, and as you assess and analyze what happened to Bernie Sanders. Yeah. I wonder how many people are going to draw that link directly back to NAFTA, as you did, and look at the architects of NAFTA. And they are Bill Clinton, Bill Daley, and Rahm Emanuel. Bill Daley and Rahm Emanuel, they were there turning the screws to get the votes to pass NAFTA, period.
And as I said, with this broad look, this broad sweep of history now, I don't think NAFTA was wrong. I think NAFTA was something that we kind of had to confront. It was something the United States needed to accept, that it was in a complex web of things in the world, and that it was going to need to change the way it did some things.
As I said, I totally agree with that. But I think what you have in the triumvirate of Bill Clinton and Bill Daley and Rahm Emanuel, you have the corporatist wing of the Democratic Party, which was seduced and actively participated. Obviously the clout that needed to be delivered was delivered, and again, also a lot of Republicans.
Lots
it was
of them,
that corporatist.
Right? It was one of the last times everybody agreed.
That's right. It was that clout that was going to do something. They were going to do something because they knew more than the little guy. And the point that I made to Bill Daley when I talked with him at the Palmer House after a press conference, I said, Bill, take the time, because as a host of a talk show, I was getting that feedback from the little guy. This is umpteen years ago. And I was sort of sharing, I said, you got to take time to explain it. But again, the corporatist mentality, which is, whether it is Bill Clinton, whether it is Hillary Clinton, whether it is Bill Daley, whether it is Rahm Emanuel, they don't think they have to take the time to explain and bring everybody else up to speed.
But
that is a political mistake.
There's
they
another layer.
Win the war, they win the battle, but they lose the war.
Because they're smart enough to know that if
they're smarter than everybody else.
These are the guys who say things like, if you're explaining, you're losing. This is one of their things, right? And if you tried to explain NAFTA to people, they're just going to say, what are you talking about? You're going to take away my job. So you can't explain it. You just got to push it through and hope it works or something.
Well, they did it, but the other messenger of that, and obviously it would have been the appropriate messenger, would have been the President of the United States, for Bill Clinton to basically explain.
And he was a good explainer.
He was a very good explainer. He was explainer in chief, and yet his wife is, I think, at the moment, I think, is suffering some of the some of those sores, from unhealed sores.
And one other quick footnote on the climbing ladder thing, I guess as a sort of a dyed-in-the-wool moderate, that it's not a case of just climbing the ladder and then coming back down the ladder. There are days when you come down a few rungs and go up a few rungs, and when you're coming down 2 or 3 rungs, that's when you need those people to help you to not come any further down. And Rahm Emanuel has not had that. So when he's run into problems, he just slides down that ladder, and there's nobody there to back him up.
Yep.
That seems to be the way it's been to me. So one more. Let's talk about Ken Dunkin and Julianna Stratton in the 5th District. I understand you live there. Well, congratulations to you.
My mailbox is just chocked full with all the information from both sides.
How has Mr. Dunkin been serving you as a constituent? You have been happy with him? Never mind. Don't have to answer that. So
I played the Fifth Amendment on that.
So what we're seeing here is like the Spanish Civil War or something. I mean, we're seeing like one of the biggest proxy wars that I can ever remember. $3.3 million has been spent on a stupid little state race.
Well, you have an imperfect incumbent in Ken Dunkin. He is being propped up by all kinds of money provided by the governor's, supporters, be they surreptitious or not. And then you have obviously someone who is in there for the prime purpose of punishing Ken Dunkin and giving the speaker, a veto-proof, house. And there's a lot riding on it. There's a lot riding, so much so that you get the President of the United States, stooping down to engage and endorse, in a state representative race, which gets everybody's attention. Yeah. Sit down.
Sit down. You didn't put the sit down part in there. I guess the bigger question for this though is, we haven't talked at all about Bruce Rauner, and we're running out of time. We just can't do everything here. But does Bruce Rauner really believe that if he peels off a couple of Dunkin-like people, that he's going to be able to win this big battle?
I think so.
And do you think that's a successful strategy?
I will tell you next Wednesday.
Yeah,
but if you can,
as they say in TV news,
if by pouring in tons and tons of money, if you can save an imperfect candidate like Mr. Dunkin, then there's reason to believe that there are other candidates that you can provide that same type of support to, and they will be victorious, and maybe they don't have some of the baggage, the apparent baggage.
You're making a horrible example in a way. You're saying, look what happened to him. We can do the same thing to you.
No, I think that. What we have here, which is unique, is that we have, for the first time ever, we have a level playing field insofar as money is concerned. You have the powerful leaders of the House and Senate, and then you have the governor, and both are willing to spend a lot of money to get their way. It used to be that it was only the Democrats that had that clout. Now we have a different situation. We're more on a level playing field. The one thing that kind of surprises me is that this gets back to what I mentioned about Bill Daley and Rahm Emanuel and Bill Clinton, not taking the time to have a conversation about what it is that you're doing, because I think that although Rauner obviously is mentioned in the paper by editorial boards, I don't hear people talking about Bruce Rauner on the street. I think if he walked into some places in Chicago, people wouldn't even know who he is. He's not visibly known. He's not out there. He's not appearing on shows just to sort of explain who this guy is.
Very
so
good point.
he needs to communicate more so that people can either agree or disagree with him. But he's got to make his pitch. He made his pitch when he was running. And then he's even if he has to buy commercials, he should be buying commercials explaining exactly what he's trying to do.
Of course, his pitch was kind of Trump-like. Elect me and I'll fix all this.
That is correct.
I'm a businessman.
An
I know
outsider,
how to do
a businessman.
This. Right. I know
so
how to
we've heard
fix
that.
this stuff. Yeah.
Well, we have an example of how that's happened, and we will see what happens, in the future. But I mean, I think I don't see anybody is going to challenge him in a Republican primary.
No, unless it's somebody even richer than he is.
Well, I mean, those are the great challenges.
Yeah. Can I sneak in just one more quick question?
I have nothing more to do.
Is Tammy Duckworth in trouble? I'm seeing all these stories in the last few days about how she wasn't really a very good administrator at the VA, that there was a lot of people who were complaining about things, whistleblowers, and she wasn't paying any attention to it. It's hardly possible that Andrea Zopp could eclipse her at this point, right? She's going to win the nomination.
I think she's going to win the nomination. That would be my guess. You have two African Americans in that race. I think that vote will be somewhat split.
Yeah.
Tammy Duckworth has sort of a lot of the power people behind her, including Rahm Emanuel, who obviously first recruited her to run for Congress many years ago. I also think that in a general election, she may be vulnerable to Mark Kirk. I mean, we have a situation where we have two candidates who each have handicaps.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
They are both, having seen them with my own eyes, they are both have difficulty walking. The question is going to be when you have her pitted against Mark Kirk, and I don't know to what extent his stroke has affected his abilities, mental abilities. I don't know. I've heard that it hasn't affected it at all. I haven't seen the senator or talked with the senator in a couple of years, but Mark Kirk was, and I will say probably still is, a very smart man. And so he will have to make his case to the people of Illinois that he deserves another chance. And of course, over this whole race is going to be the balance of the Supreme Court. Now you have a lot of conservatives, and this is going to be the great challenge. Whether or not, and there's a large number of conservatives because he has a nominal token opposition in the primary. You have a lot of conservatives that absolutely despise Mark Kirk. But when it comes to the going into that polling booth in November, the Supreme Court of the United States is going to be at stake. And they're going to have to say to themselves, who is most likely to support someone who has conservative values? Is it going to be Mark Kirk? Or is it going to be Tammy Duckworth? That's an easy answer to that question. But again, conservatives, just like the Bernie Sanders voters now who may lose this primary, they've got to say to themselves, which is the lesser of two evils? Who's going to most likely give me what I want? And so that Supreme Court battle is going to be, I think that's going to be the single issue for every United States senator up for election.
I agree with that, and I was going to say, it's certainly true on the other side too, for people who want to get away from the Scalia brand of Supreme Court. This is one of those places where you just got to show up. you got to vote.
And also, by the way, it becomes the key issue also in the presidency, the battle for the presidency, because every 4 years there's a portion of the campaign where they talk about the importance of the Supreme Court. It goes in one ear, out the other. The myriad of other issues, just roll over that as a serious issue. But again, this year, because of exactly where we are and because of the timing of Scalia's death, this is going to be a key issue. And so the question, even the other night, and by the way, it was not this most recent victory night. It was the previous victory night of Donald Trump. He made one of his most coherent arguments was to a third party and to those that don't support the Republican nominee about what it will mean as to who the next justice of the Supreme Court is. It was very believable, very true, and I think if that piece, if Trump can sort of repeat that, like he repeats, we're going to make America great again. If he can get that into his standard stump speech, I think a lot of those Republicans that can't stand Donald Trump When they walk into that poll, they're going to say, you know what, I've got two choices. Who do I want to control the United States Supreme Court? Some of them may stick with Donald Trump.
I heard him on Live with Howard Stern not more than a month ago saying that he would appoint Howard Stern to the Supreme Court. Howard Stern asked him if he would do it, and he said, yes, I heard it with my own ears.
Well, I think we should look into that. And when was the last time you heard Howard Stern's name mentioned at a Republican debate? Never?
But he did say, I mean, Howard said
I
he
know.
got him and he pinned him down. He said, look, I'm already a judge on whatever it is, America's Got Talent, so I've got experience. I want you, and he said, okay, Howard, I'll do it. So there, leave it at that. Bruce, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ken.
We'll have to do this again sometime. Bruce DuMont is the host of Beyond the Beltway. You can hear it on WIND, and you can just see it everywhere. It's
And
kind of like
election
our
night.
show, on election night, live election night on WIND, and you can, just kind of like this show, you can just see it everywhere. Just Google Beyond the Beltway, and it'll just show up in your Google Glass or whatever it is. I'm Ken Davis. Likewise, the same thing is true for Chicago Newsroom here on Can TV, a production of Can TV, and this is where you can go to see it anytime you want, any time of the night or day. Subscribe to our iTunes podcast too, won't you please? See you next week with another show here on Can TV. I think we'll have a good show for you next week because it'll be the show afterward. And we'll have Marianne Ahern here too. Thanks. Bye.